This conference will now be recorded.
The context I have with DOT in Albany that I use for, with Ironman, made a few calls back and forth, and there was a lot of positive response. So a synopsis is, if we close Main Street to traffic from on the lakeside, from the sidewalk all the way to the yellow line, the sidewalk gets maintained as is, but we allow businesses, whether it's restaurants or retail, put out tables, chairs, umbrellas, lights, music, racks for display, whatever, on the street. That will basically give them more square footage. We experimented with it for 2 months, just July and August, maybe through Labor Day. And we see how it works. We do one-way traffic on the other side, on the Northwood side, and we close off traffic on the Mirror Lake Drive, on the Mirror Lake side. And that creates basically an open air festival every day. And it creates a chance for people who maybe are nervous about going inside, like the mayor said, to be able to sit outside and shop and eat and drink and relax. And it also gives Lake Placid a chance to reimagine itself. So we can reimagine Main Street as an experiment just for the summer in light of the COVID crisis. The beauty of it is we don't have to do it permanently. We can test it out and see if it works. It doesn't look like there's going to be, from all accounts, it doesn't look like it's going to be as busy this summer as it has been in the past. So while we'll lose some parking, I think a majority of people that we have contacted are so enthusiastic about it, it's kind of stunning. So we had a meeting earlier this week, and Artie said, go out and pull the Main Street merchants. We don't want to just seem like it's an heavy-handed thing coming from the village. And between myself and Lori Fitzgerald and Catherine Erickson, we probably reached out to over 60, actually got in contact with over 60 businesses. And of that, a handful of people have said no.
Actually, if you count it was only 3.
There's a couple more that said no today. So, but I don't think I've ever seen Main Street come together the way it has for a project like this. The comments were so varied. They were like, I thought of this idea 10 years ago. Why didn't we should have done that? Or other people were saying, let's close it all the way down to all traffic and keep it up, year round. Let's keep it like this. Well, I'm like, whoa, settle down. We can experiment for a little bit and see how it works out. The DOT, I've reached out to my contact that I have at Ironman, and he bumped me up to his boss, the chairman for Region 1, the director for Region 1, and he said, if you had asked us to do this 6 months ago, we would have said absolutely not. But now he said the governor is asking us to reimagine ourselves in a new world, and he goes, we will do what we can to help you out, and we don't see this as a problem at all. So I had more conversations with them this morning, and we talked about what needs to be done safety-wise to protect the shoppers and the diners on Main Street. And we talked to the DPW. Brad Hathaway had some great ideas about some Adirondack look to put along the center line to protect the people who are shopping and eating from any possible vehicle intrusion. But again, being able to space it so there can be deliveries, there can be garbage pickup, there can be fuel oil and propane deliveries earlier in the morning than they normally do, but we can make it happen. We talked to Sharice, the beautification committee today, and she was like, oh, maybe we have to move some flower planters around, but we can make it happen. So the fact that people came together and were willing to listen and were enthusiastic about changing something that has been going on for, I don't know how long Lake Placid has been around, but other than during the Olympics.
120 years.
120 years. So we closed Main Street for the Olympics, I believe. And this will be experiment number 2.
No, it will be this time.
This will be half. Yeah, this won't be it. And I understand the parking issue. People are concerned. The village is expanding the parking lot at the MPT Bank lot. I talked to Father John at St. Agnes, and he's willing to give some of his spots up in the St. Agnes school parking lot. The High Beach Resort is willing to give us some spots in their parking lots. And, I think the opportunity is there. I don't think we will lose as much parking as we originally thought. because in front of the Golden Arrow, there's spots for parking. Where people don't use, where people aren't interested in using the option of expanding their storefront, we can put parking, or we can put loading and loading zones, or we can put drop off pickup. You know, it's flexible, we can do whatever we think is smart and will work. And the beauty is we can change things around. It doesn't, it's not like anybody's set in stone. It's amazing the flexibility that everybody's showing. So there's my pitch.
Well, I think the purposes of having you present this evening, Greg, we're twofold. One, the board obviously needs to, we need to engage the village, and we will. But I think more importantly, it also, it moves it now from the efforts that have been put on with your help in the Main Street businesses to making it a public discussion. I think at this point, the village board, I'm speaking for the board, maybe I have the trustees a little bit, but I think the board recognizes that this summer is going to be unusual. Most of the major events have either are off the calendar, or they're at least pushed back to the latter part of August. I think Lacrosse still is hoping that they can do something in their normal time period, but it's going to be a very reduced footprint from what they normally would be bringing to Lake Placid. Ironman at this point, although it's moved out of the July date, I don't know that they're ready to confirm August. But likewise, they're looking to hold on to Lake Placid for maybe just a little bit later in the summer. But I guess what I'm really saying is, if you want to imagine Main Street this summer without the events, without the traffic, and with roughly 78 businesses on the street, if I counted this list correctly, that are all trying to figure out how to get back into a normal business pattern. While I'm not sure there is a normal pattern for this summer, I do think that we want to take every step we can to welcome people back into the village when it's appropriate for that to happen. And that's beginning with the opening of phase one, the opening of the North Country to reopen business. And it would look like at this point, by the end of June, we could conceivably be through phase 4 for this coming summer, assuming that nothing interferes with the metrics, the 7 metrics that the state has put in place for the various districts to have to follow. So there's every reason to want to put forth an effort to make the reintroduction for the public, both for our local families and subsequently for our visiting public, which really supports our tourism economy, to as has been suggested here, reimagining Main Street. I don't think it's a big stretch of imagination. I think we can do this, but it's going to take the involvement of the village and Greg's support, Ruth's support, the business association support. And I think we're seeing early indications that everybody is worried about the same thing, and that is, what is this summer going to look like? So it creates, I think, for Roost a marketing opportunity that wasn't on the table a week ago, and maybe we'll provide the type of assist that's needed to begin to get people to feel comfortable coming back on the main street.
Well, Mayor, if I may, this the local Kickstart, and I'm never one to use Roost as a reference to influence any of the decisions I ever make on a village board, but this particular one I feel is very synergistic with Greg's idea, in a sense that the local Kickstart doing this on Main Street will make Main Street different, and since there will be less influx initially of travelers, I truly feel like it's such a unique thing that people have always wanted to see on Main Street, but never really, the reality never came to fruition. I would go so far as to say it would bring out a lot of locals initially. And I think that would be something that I think a lot of locals would appreciate, because they oftentimes don't have time to appreciate and enjoy Main Street, but now they will. And I think that would be a nice sort of to establish some sort of connection with our locals, and then also get everyone comfortable with the eventual influx of visitors as well, for sure.
Well, what I'd like to propose this evening is that the board, if it would, put its support behind this effort. I'd like the authority of the board to continue to work with Greg, with Bruce, with the Business Association. I've already been involving Chief Moore and also Brad Hathaway and also Charisse from the Business Beautification Association, because this is something, and probably others that I'm not naming at the moment, because if we're going to pull this off, it's a relatively short window. We have, through Peter's efforts, approached our elected officials in Albany for some assistance. And obviously, as you heard, the Department of Transportation is interested in the project. The interesting thing is that we already have the traffic deferral program in place for the Main Street rebuild project. So the Department of Transportation already has that in Albany for their engineers' use. The other area where we would probably need some help, since timing is short, it would be with the Alcohol and Beverage Control Board. And I received assurance this afternoon that depending upon how this board sees this, we will get the assistance we need to bring this project forward with them, because that involves each individual property that might be engaged along the street in the food and beverage business. We probably also will have some discussion with the Department of Health over any special requirements that they might have. So there will have to be a fair amount of work done fairly quickly if we're going to do this for the months of July and August. But I actually think there's strong interest, and I think we ought to try to put something together that, from a marketing standpoint, for Ruth's benefit and the work they're doing, might just put a nice frosting on the cake for them. So that's where we look at. There will be some costs, and I think those will probably be fairly modest. We actually have some of the planters and stuff that normally would be going around Mirror Lake, but with the sidewalk project starting next week, we're going to be relocating those in any event, so they become available along with the plants that we supply to use along Main Street. So some things will fall in place and will make it easier. We're actually looking at the possibility of using as a barrier along the street, because it's required, using some Adirondack barriers, which are normally called rocks. Boulders. Boulders. We seem to have plenty of those around. So there's a possibility that something could be done that would look tasteful. I'm hopeful that there will be enough spaces reserved along the curbside that deliveries can still take place appropriately, that service drops such as the fuel oil company can make their deliveries, that we have spaces for disabled people, which we're required to have anyway, and maybe we can develop a scheme that would somehow split between deliveries, and those spaces might become open for parking. Now, all of this suggests that we're going to remove parking, obviously, from the post, roughly the golden arrow, generations, to 1 Main Street. I think we have to, that will have an impact on our budget. In July and August are 2 of the most substantial months for parking meter revenue. But I think we can mitigate the revenue issue to some extent. We have the municipal parking lot, which would become one of the two primary parking lots that would support that. I think you're aware of the fact that with the budget developing, we may look at the meter fees in that lot, which we set 3 or 4 years ago intentionally to try to encourage cars to come off the main street and use that lot instead because it would be less expensive. But at this point in time, I think we can make some adjustments so that hopefully the impact on the budget will be minimal. The one impact that I can't measure is what the reduced amount of traffic into Lake Placid in July and August is going to create. I don't think we have a crystal ball that's good enough to figure that out. So to some degree, that's an issue that we have in mind. There may be other issues that have come up that haven't surfaced in the short time that we've had time to get together and try to work this out. But what I would like this evening is the authority of the board to continue to pursue the project proposal and come back to the board with whatever requirements we have that pop up that we're not thinking about at the moment.
You need a motion for that?
I have one question for Janet. Hypothetically, if a vehicle did get by the barrier and struck any of the people sitting in any of these tables, where's the liability fall?
Well, for the most part, it falls on the, it'll fall on the driver of the vehicle, but we're talking about using boulders. We've also considered, although they have to be acquired, using regular Jersey barriers. They don't have to be concrete. They do make them that you fill with water. That if that became a requirement of our insurance carrier, I think we would have to look at it.
And the DOT, when I asked them about that option this morning, they said a boulder or a planter would serve the same purpose as a Jersey barrier in their minds. So that was the
I
question.
don't think it would be any different than if a car currently jumped the curb and went into a building. I mean, it's a driver error, and as long as the protections were met DOT standards, I think we would be not necessarily liable unless we as a village moved the barriers or did something that exacerbated a dangerous situation. But other than that, I mean, I don't think it's anything different than the way it is now.
So Greg, your intention is for it to meet DOT standards, safe for the customers, and for it to be tasteful all along Main Street, to be presentable. That's the goal, correct?
And to make it accessible for deliveries and for trash pickup and whatever else is necessary.
Watering flowers.
Watering flowers.
You know, I think you're going to have delivery availability. You're going to have accessibility to meet ADA, and you're going to have crosswalks.
And my suggestion was that there will be some places where the current crosswalk will be blocked by a storefront, and the crosswalks, I think, are relatively easily moved.
Except for the 88.
Except for the 88 portion. Yeah, if we need a curb cut out, obviously we need that. And that's something that obviously we need to look at. We would have to be compliant with ADA, and the DOT can advise us on what we can do there. But in my discussions about crosswalks with them, they said you can put crosswalks where you wish. And if it's a matter of the DPW installing a curb cut to satisfy the ADA requirements.
Move that pavement to.
Yeah, exactly.
You tear it up next year.
Yeah, that's true. And the same thing, ADA wise and safety wise on the street. If say an establishment wanted to run power to have speakers and music or lights or whatever on their new patio on the street, I would suggest we require them to have a cable bump so that's the cover, so it's another ADA compliant structure on the street to cover the cables so that people aren't tripping over wire.
Greg, from a revenue standpoint, have because we're going to lose the revenue from parking, has there been any indication or thought of a fee to the restaurant or storefront for utilizing the street?
I don't think we've thought about it that way yet, but clearly that's a topic that can come up.
I think initially, I don't know if that would necessarily make sense since we want to do everything we possibly can to get traffic and Main Street back up again. But I can see if we are to continue it, even though the street is becoming increasingly busy, that could be a possibility down the line for the rest at some point, from my perspective.
What I'd like to do on the parking is first see if I can, by adjusting meter rates that exist in the big parking lot, mitigate a good portion of what we might otherwise expect to realize from the curbside parking. I think that's something we have to look at. I'm already aware of the fact that, with the huge reduction in traffic in Lake Placid, our budgeted revenue flows from metering is down, and I expect it's going to stay down throughout the summer without the larger events here to drive it. But I think we have some opportunity to where we can mitigate some of that without having maybe to take the course you're thinking about, Jason. I think the individual businesses, food and beverage at least, if they're going to provide beverages that involve alcohol, are going to have a fair amount of effort that they're going to have to expend in some finances. I did receive a call from one of our local business people today indicating that she was aware of and was working with a supplier that could supply outdoor furniture, because I don't know that every dining room in the village has furniture that's going to be suitable for outdoors on the street or weatherproof. But I suggested to her that once this was moving along a little bit more, that maybe she should speak directly to the group that's organizing it.
Another point to that is if you look up, if there's going to be restrictions on even outdoor spacing for people, for establishments that currently have outdoor patio furniture, like High Beach Resort, like the Pickle Pig, you just drive up the street and you can see, 20 picnic tables in front of Pickle Pig. If they're going to have to be limited in what they can space even outdoors, maybe they can make arrangements with their neighbors and with other storefronts to either rent or loan their furniture that they won't be able to use anyway. Maybe they can loan to others. So it seems like.
And also the restaurants on that side of the street mostly have outdoor dining. And if that capacity has to be reduced by 50 or 75%, that would allow them to move those tables out into the street and maintain that capacity.
They could share with their neighbor, it would be a great world.
So largely, this will become an undertaking that the people that have substantially expressed interest in pursuing along the street, and the total list that I counted was 78 business names on here. And at the time that I got this sheet, at least we had 72% of them expressing an interest in something like this. There were 20 that had not yet been contacted. So it was either a yay or a nay after those. And as Greg said, I guess maybe as of today, we're up to maybe 4 or 5 that did not feel that it would be a benefit to themselves. But I think that's strong evidence of the interest. And we seem to have energy and that Greg represents and leads off that and Bruce has indicated support for. That would help to make this a reality. So I'm reasonably
Craig,
confident.
can I add one more thing? The business association, so I've been working with Greg as an individual as opposed to a representative of the business association. So the business association executive committee has not met on this. I did poll each of them individually. We're meeting on Wednesday. 2 of the dissenters sit on our boards. So, but they have not as a group approve this, so I just want to clarify that before that gets into the record and I get into more trouble than I'm already in.
Is it possible to get a letter of support from you guys?
Well, we're meeting on Wednesday. Wayne and Mark are feeling pretty strongly against. Everyone else was very supportive of it when I spoke to them. But we have not met as a group to discuss this, so I don't want to position it as the LPBA is all bought in. If we had to take a vote, the vote would be yes, as it currently stands. But I want to have that conversation first before we indicate that it's that organization supporting us. All of the businesses are highly supportive based on our polling, but has been no formal vote on the part of the board of the LPBA.
It would be interesting, Lori, just to know what the concerns are that your two members that have not expressed support for this, because their businesses have expressed partial support where there's a sort of a jury is.
Right. There are some split households going on. The concerns that, and Greg can chime in on Mark because he's sort of spoken to both of us. The bookstore was concerned about curbside pickup, which they would still be able to do under this model. There's also a sense from Mark that this favors restaurants more so than it does retailers, which may or may not be true. But then he also then followed up and said, well, it's not really good for restaurants either because of furniture expenses. But we've not had I've not had a conversation with him. I spoke to Sarah. I think he's hesitant to do something different. He wants to, and I think Ruthie's Run certainly doesn't feel like it's something that they would do. But Kathy was supportive of doing it for everyone else, and Wayne just feels like we shouldn't do it. So I don't, they're saying we should wait and see what happens and see how, give businesses a chance to get on their feet. But I see this as a chance to get businesses on their feet because capacities are going to be reduced, no matter how we go about this, capacity is going to be reduced. And I think we're trying to mitigate the parking problem, which is always an issue for them. But until we have a full-on conversation, I don't really have more information than that. But to Art's question, yes, if the majority of our executive committee agrees, then we would do a letter of support, which I suspect will happen, but I just don't want to put the cart before the horse.
That's fair.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions for Greg on this? I think it's a work, at this moment, assuming the board doesn't say otherwise, it's a work in progress. And I think the team that's trying to put it together will probably grow. As other individuals express some interest. But like everything else, this community, when there's an opportunity to do something, I think it's fair to say that people in this community do rise to the occasion. And this represents as I said, I think it's unique. I think from a marketing standpoint, it might help to set Lake Placid a little bit ahead of what many communities don't have this opportunity. They don't have the shops and stores in the configuration we do. But there's very little else that we can do to help our Main Street businesses get back in the game. But as Lori has said, and I think we're all aware of the fact that whether you're retail or food and beverage, the capacity of your store to have people in it is going to be limited by the square footage of the dining room, or in this case, the shop. And this is a way of expanding that capacity by using a little bit of the outdoors, at least while weather permits.
Craig, and Greg, I know you've got contacts with the DOT and a good working relationship with them, and I think the village does too through all of our work we've had to do over the past couple of years on Main Street. But I think it would be important that there be a discussion and that there be one lead agency, so to speak, or one lead person who's dealing with DOT. And I just think that would be best, that there's one entity or one person that's speaking with them for the rest. Otherwise, it's going to get confusing, and they may throw up their hands and say, well, who's leading the charge here? Just a thought for down the road. There ought to be one contact working with the DOT.
You are correct, Janet, and that would, the lead agency would be the village, and to kick this off, what they would be looking for from the village is a letter, at least at this point, expressing the thought that we're exploring this. And I don't think that, I mean, Greg's contacts at DOTs are essentially the same people that we have connections with. So I don't see, I think we can work that out okay.
And Janet, just so you know, I spoke with Joe Rudnick today, and he's the head traffic guy for our region. And he pushed me, he said, your first step is to reach out to Essex County, because this is an Essex County project. And he gave me a list of 4 names, George Landry and Elizabethtown. We start with them, and then we bump it up from there. And they have a mechanism for both a traffic management standpoint and a permit standpoint. And obviously, you know, we all have the same contacts there. And they're willing to push things ahead on a rather rapid basis, realizing that time is an issue for us.
Brad's in on the solar thing as well.
Yes, right now.
And I just don't want them, I just think there ought to be clear. I'm not saying who should do it, but I'm just saying that there should be a point liaison person for the DOT as it starts out here locally and gets kicked up the ladder, and hopefully it all happens quickly.
It's the first time in 11 years on the board that I heard that a project goes to the DOT and they're excited, and then they offer help and names. So it must be something good. So.
Well, keep in mind that the governor is really leading the focus here. He's pushing his agencies to do what they can do. I mean, in effect, reimagining New York requires, and I'm sure there will be others that are thinking the same way. It requires thinking out of the box, because whatever is going to be normal in July and August is not going to be normal as we know it.
And I appreciate the board's support in allowing me to take on this project, and Lori's help, and Catherine Erickson and Mary Jane's help, and everybody. It's been kind of eye-opening, the fact that so many people with so many seeming outside interests are coming together to make this a reality. It's pretty exciting to see the enthusiasm in town. You know, it's scary for what we're seeing. This virus, this crisis is tough, but the fact that we can come together and make something new and innovative happen is pretty awesome. Thank you.
Agreed.
Any other questions from the trustees for Greg?
Thank you.
If not, I thank you, Greg, and we can move on to our normal agenda.
Do we need to make are you sending a letter to the DOT mayor? Do you need a motion authorizing you to send a letter, or is that?
It would be helpful if I had that motion, yes.
I'll move.
Just
I'll move.
project. Jason, you move. Art seconds. Further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you. We're on the way.
Thank you, Greg.
Moving on the agenda, the second item under section 2 of the quick items is the results of the bid that was authorized at the last board meeting for electric cable that's required by the electric department. We have there was only one company that bid, it was Okanite. In speaking, and you have the results of the bids. There were 3 different cable sizes that were requested bids on. 3 reels of number 1, which is a polyethylene, I think it's underground cable, came in at $12,615. The second one, Kimball has recommended that because of the freight charges that we not award. And the third one is the one that we want to have very soon, because it is 7,500 feet of 15,000 feet of cable that will be used to replace some faulty cable on Lake Placid Lake to keep that
Kimball's on the line if you wanted to explain any.
Kimball, do you want to jump in on that at all?
Greg did such a good job of it, I don't think I need to.
We'll find out. The trustees have any questions about the bid results?
No.
In that case, then I'd ask for a motion to accept the electric superintendent's recommendation that we award the bid for item number 1 and item number 3 to Okanite, and that we're not going to award number 2 at this time.
So moved.
Bart
And Jason,
moves, Jason.
Second either.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? That moves. The next item we've got a bunch of service agreements tonight. The first one we have is for the wastewater treatment plant. You may recall during our work session that we informed the board that the SCADA system that currently controls the plant, which is very dated and old, is failing the village, and therefore we brought in General Control Systems, who manages all of that aspect of the wastewater plant for the village. What you have in front of you is a proposal to replace the SCADA workstations and software, includes the hardware, all the new software and programming, at a price of $47,605. On pages 2 and 3, you have some options. I spoke with Brad earlier today, and he is suggesting that we do not need at the present time to elect any of the options. It may very well be that as the project gets further along, that some of those would become necessary, but won't know that until the new system is actually installed and they can make better decisions about those options. Janet, I don't know if you looked at these.
I did, and they're all our standard contracts. My question earlier today to you was, are these service contracts, or so therefore we did not have to go out to bid? The professional contracts with entities that we know and already have our systems working for us.
And that is the position that General Control Systems has on this particular department.
Yeah, I think they're a known entity, and if there's a motion made to approve the contract, it should just recognize their professional service with all of our records and data already in their systems.
They have been performing service work right along for the wastewater plant. Brad brought them in on this one, and frankly, they were able to patch up the system enough that we can get the necessary reporting issues that need to be addressed, but that is a short-term patch that cannot be assured. So therefore, based on my discussions with Brad and knowledge of the critical nature of this, we've known for some time that the control systems were dated, and frankly, I guess we managed to push them as far along as we could. But I would ask for a motion tonight authorizing the acceptance for General Control Systems to install the work that they have indicated on page 1 of their proposal at a cost of $47,605.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion on it? If not, we'll call a motion. All in favor? Any
Aye.
opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, we can move on that. take some of the worry off the table for that. The next 4 items you have from QEI LLC, they are the service company that provides, well, you can read each one of the service agreements that's in the packet. There's various pieces of equipment that they support for the electric department. In total, the 4 items come up to $11,268. Kim, do you want to comment on that?
I did review them all, and you know, I did check with a couple other utilities that have the similar QEI systems, and they all do use the maintenance agreement. So I do recommend them and highly recommend them, I must say.
If you're looking for the specific function that each one of these does, at the very bottom, there's a title Master Station Software Service Agreement, Automation Hardware Service Agreement. This one I didn't quite get. ConfigWiz Software Service Agreement. I'm guessing that's a specialized piece of equipment. Kim?
It's has more to deal with the software that is on the SCADA system, where you make modifications to it. They give you the technical support or any changes you make to it.
And then the last one, which was the least costly, I guess at $1,000, was a diagnostic maintenance service agreement. And my take on that is that they come in and twice a year do a check of the system and run diagnostic testing on it to make sure that it is properly reading.
Yes.
Any questions from any of the trustees?
So moved.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion, or shall we just call a motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. And then the next one, which has to do with the water department primarily. These are service agreements on various generators that take over at our pump stations when the electricity goes off and we have a service failure. The first one, this is with Stewart and Stevenson, who've been doing these for as long as I can remember. The Raybrook generator, $1,165, and that, by the way, I believe gets passed by agreement, passes through the town.
Yeah.
Mill Pond lift station, $3,495. That's really one of the bigger pump stations generators. Generator at the pump house that keeps the water flowing, $1,425. Wastewater treatment plant, $2,850. And then the new generator that was installed at the town garage, $1,165. And I think that one also gets, the cost of that service gets shared. So these are consistent with what we've seen in prior years. You have in your packets a complete description of the range of services that are scheduled and provided. And then you also have, in the event that it's necessary, I believe, an hourly rate for service work that is not considered part of the service agreements. These are pretty much similar to what I saw last year and the year before. I would recommend that we approve them. Any other questions on any of these? In that case, then we'll call that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Okay, that takes care of that. The next item we have, for the last several years, since 2014, the village has retained the services of Goldberger and Kremer Law Firm. They're out of Albany. Brian Kremer is the partner that works with the village. They are used by the village specifically to deal with labor negotiations, and other related matters that come up from time to time that employees bring to the village. The retainer agreement that we currently operate under expired as of December 31st, at which point for 2019, the retainer rate was $2,525 per month. They're actually proposing to renew it for 3 years. The 2825 would stay in place for 2020 without change. 2875 per month for 2021 and $2,925 per month for 2022. In addition to that, they include an hourly rate for certain other services that are not contained as part of the monthly retainer. Primarily, the monthly retainer provides for the renegotiation of our 5 labor agreements, all of which are coming up, either are under negotiation right now or coming up for negotiation in July. In addition to that, they represent us certain other matters that are not part of the retainer. And when those, we don't have a lot of that, there is some. And you can see that their hourly rate would be $220 per hour for that type of representation. And then their travel time and billing rate is unchanged from last year as far as I can see. Frankly, the relationship and the service level that we've gotten from Mr. Kremer has been exceptional. I think for those reasons, and the fact that we're in the middle of negotiating all renewals on 4 of our 5 labor agreements, and the 5th one is in mediation, I would recommend that we keep and continue to retain Goldberger and Kremer going forward for the next 3 years.
Which we can cancel within 30 days, we have notice at any time. Something goes wrong.
That's a good point. That has always been on the table, that if we reach a point where we want to withdraw from the retainer agreement, we can do that. 30 days notice.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Scott? Jason?
I'd just like to add that I think we're getting to the point where maybe we need to look and see what else is out there other than this, just these guys. Maybe there is somebody more local that's not so far away that maybe we can save a little bit of money on this.
I totally agree with you. If we find somebody, we're not stuck with this for 3 years.
No, I know, and I get that. I like that language is in there. We've gone such a long period of time with them, and it seems like the price just keeps going up and up and up. And I think we'd be doing our due diligence if we would at least look to see what else is out there.
I agree.
Comments, Jason?
I concur with Scott. I think moving forward, entering in this agreement is logical, but concurrently moving forward, we should expand our scope.
Now, one of the difficulties with this is there's not a lot of people around that do labor relations work up here. Previous to this, I think the last individual we had might have been Dan McKillop when I was first elected. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Comments?
No, I can look around and get back to you all with some information, but I agree that there are not any specific and specialty labor relation firms very close to Lake Placid.
Sadly, no.
It was just Scott, you're muted.
I mean, what are all the other municipalities in St. Lawrence County, Clinton County? I mean, just reaching out to who some of them are using, I guess.
Uses somebody, I believe, from the Utica area. Plattsburgh actually uses Goldberger and Kremer, Brian Kremer. And they have, they're almost as well, they were using them before we actually started working with them. But I think with Janet's assistance, we can look around and see what else is out there for the future.
Sure.
So
And I understand, Mayor, your perspective is that you developed a relationship, so there's institutional knowledge, so there's less time getting up to speed in order for negotiations to take place. But I also see Scott's where competition might increase service or decrease costs potentially, in theory. That's all, my 2 cents.
Okay, we have a motion on the table and it's been seconded. Unless there's further discussion, we'll call a motion. All in favor of renewing the retainer agreement as it's proposed? Indicate aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? With that?
Peter said he can.
He said he was. He's in. Okay.
You say aye from the bathroom?
He seconded, so we'll assume.
He seconded it.
Hear the echo down the hall.
Okay, at the last meeting, I indicated to you the candidates for the appointment to the short-term vacation rental board, short-term rental appeals board, I'm sorry. When we did that, we indicated our preferences and that went back to the town board. The town has appointed and acted on the following 5 individuals, and I think they're consistent with our wishes. What they also did was assign a term to each one, so that over the 5-year term, each one of these people will have an opportunity to turn over. So the person filling the 1-year term would be Lori Fitzgerald. And I remind you, she can run again. The 2-year term, Yvonne Ramonda. The 3-year term, Bob DeMarco. The 4-year term, Gail Lautenschutz. And the 5-year term, Dave Janito. With that action, which is consistent with, I think, what we were thinking at our last board meeting, I would like to formally appoint them from the village board to the short-term rental appeals board for the terms noted, and would ask the board's ratification of those appointments.
Second.
Peter, any further discussion on that?
Yeah, so just to refresh everyone's memory, which one of those, I know Bob DeMarco and David and Lori are not short-term rental involved. Were the other 2 involved to some extent?
Mrs. Lautenschutz operates a vacation rental house cleaning service, has for 2 or 3 years now that I'm aware of.
And lives locally.
And lives locally. She and her husband live on Bond Ridge. They also own and operate an apartment building on Sentinel Road. And I do know from prior knowledge that she has, at least on occasion, offered one of their apartments as a short-term vacation rental. Okay. So she has significant knowledge. I spoke with her personally to confirm her interest. And I believe she confirmed to me that she works for about 80 different homes that require cleaning services, not all at the same time, but over a period of time. And I think probably from that perspective has a deep knowledge of some of the issues that vacation rental properties have to deal with. I will say that I worked with her when she worked for the hospital. I found her ability to think and make good judgments as a hospital supervisor to be, she's got her feet square on the ground. I think she would do a good job and would represent both the interests of the vacation rental industry when it makes sense, but would also understand maybe sometimes when it doesn't make sense.
Okay, thank you.
And I think most of the other candidates we know. Ms. Ramonda's provided a full written application with a resume, and her resume, as I remember, indicated that her work experience, her life's experiences were that of a person who's had to make judgments in her own work before. Janet, I think you may know a little bit more about her.
I don't know her personally at all. I know that her resume and that they just did buy a home in the village. They've lived here renting for a little bit. I don't know how long, but they are now homeowners.
So with that said, the village board's action this evening will formally install these people on the vacation appeals board and complete that process. That's one more piece that's needed. Do we have a motion?
I think we did.
Yeah, we do. We have a motion. We have a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, questions? Wes will call a motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Well, Jason, you and I are opposed.
Oh, I'm opposed, but weakly, but opposed. And, I don't know.
I just want to make sure we get.
We want
Right here.
everything. No.
3 ayes, 1 opposed.
2 opposed.
2.
We're Scotty and Jason both opposed.
So are you, that was your voting?
I thought Scott voted in favor. Did you vote? Are you opposed?
Well, I voted in favor.
You voted in
Yeah,
favor.
So we're okay. We have 3. Happy to vote for, though, based on all the effort that's been put into this. Okay, with that, finishes that issue. The request from the police department to send Francis Beck, who's a sergeant in the department, to armorer recertification training taking place July 13 and 14 in Epping, New Hampshire. The cost for the recertification is $430 for attendance, and he will have out-of-pocket costs for lodging and meals totaling another $585 for that period of time. He'll be traveling on July 12th and returning on July 15th.
So moved.
Mayor,
Yeah.
I don't know what the village's travel policy in light of our ongoing COVID is going to be, but we may want to take under some consideration and advisement before we start allowing and paying for or requiring people to go to these kinds of group gatherings. We may want to have a policy so that we avoid any potential for liability. I think there ought to be some discussion and some research into this if we're asking or mandating or requiring or authorizing our employees to travel. and also go to group meetings at this time. Just a thought.
That's a good recommendation. That's something we can follow up on at this point. My guess is that that's something that Labor Council should be able to provide to us.
Well, I think we can just do some research. This isn't until July, so we may want to table it tonight while we consider any potential exposure here.
I don't have Bill or Chuck or I don't know what the deadlines are for application. That might be the only question that I can't fulfill at this point.
Want me to check?
If you could do that with the chief, that would be great. Any thoughts on that, Scott? This is not new stuff.
Yeah, there probably is a deadline, and if he doesn't go to the school, then he would have to go back to the full course because this is a refresher, which is only 2 days. And if he doesn't go to it, then he'd end up having to go to probably a week or a 2-week school to get it if he loses his certification. So I'm inclined to approve it.
Should we just institute some sort of testing? Is that what we're asking, since it's becoming more available, testing prior or testing when he comes back? Will that alleviate any concerns?
I think that's all part of the broader discussion here.
Okay.
My concern is that the village be somehow exposed to a workers' comp claim or any other claim. That's where I'm coming from.
That's reasonable. That's reasonable. So maybe mandating, I wouldn't say mandating, but a test at least 5 days prior to, so he knows that he is positive or negative before he leaves. And then it does seem to be an essential training. So, and then testing when he comes back. I don't know.
Deputy Mayor Devlin is speaking for the chief. Confirm whether it's a deadline on the filing for registration. So as soon as he comes back in the room, I think we'll be able to answer that.
Honestly, I think all the people running these events are also being very careful because they don't want to be liable. We've already approved events since COVID started that have been canceled. We've postponed numerous events. I realize we can't rely just on their decisions, but honestly, the event people are being very careful. And I think if New Hampshire is closed, this will be canceled.
I think Art's finishing up this conversation. Let's see if we can get an answer to that while we're still on the topic.
I couldn't reach Bill, but I think he did call back, and Chuck said he didn't think it was time sensitive. We could wait 2 weeks. And it's just a recertification.
Okay, then.
Okay.
Why don't we table it? We could have an application to table it for some weeks. We'll keep it under whole business.
Fair enough.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so that's tabled. We'll put that on the next agenda, Anita. In the meantime, I get some guidance.
I'll make a motion that we give the money back to the horse show.
What?
Yeah, we need the horse show had paid for the hanging of their banners, which they do every year. And obviously, since the shows have been canceled, the banners are not going to be hung. So we just want to confirm an motion, please, to approve the refund of the rental, and it says rental fee and late fee we paid.
I think by late fee, she means they pay an extension for.
Keeping it up.
Yeah.
For keeping it up longer. Yeah, it's not really a late fee
No.
then. It's still rental fee. We have a motion just authorizing that refund. Peter seconds. All in favor?
Well, under discussion, How much is it? We can't.
Um,
I'm gonna vote in favor of it. It would just be nice that, you know.
It's not a huge.
Yeah, no, I don't have it in front of me.
We don't have it filed down here, Jason. My recollection is it was something in the neighborhood of $400, but I'm not sure.
It's fair and reasonable. I just, you know, any donation to this wonderful site called Lake Placid that hosts them every year, it would be fantastic, but.
In this case, the service that the fee represents was not provided, and it will not be provided this year. So I think it's just fair and reasonable to refund it.
Fair enough.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I voted in favor, just to be.
And then finally, we have a letter from Tammy Casey, who's the high school principal, addressed to the mayor, just indicating that on behalf of the senior class of 2020, they've had to make numerous changes in the school year, and they're making further changes with respect to the upcoming graduation. We're working hard to make the best of the current situation. Traditionally, on the last day of classes, our seniors run through the halls and then ride along Main Street and around Mirror Lake in their cars. This is one tradition that they would really enjoy keeping. Our seniors, along with their parents, have been working with the fire department as well as the police department. And together they have coordinated a plan to make this ride happen. With your backing, our seniors plan to meet on Friday, June 12th at 2:00 p.m. at the Lake Placid Horse Show grounds to begin their ride. They would proceed to Middle High School, head up Main Street, then around Mirror Lake Drive, which I believe is what they always do. Parents of the class have spoken to the police department, and they're willing to block off intersections, and the fire department has agreed to allow the use of 2 fire trucks to lead or escort their ride. If you have further questions, I can be reached at. I know I had a brief discussion with Chief Moore about this. This might be an improvement over prior years when usually the chief and I are standing in the front window watching them just whipping around Main Street and having a generally good time. There's always a little bit of horn blowing and maybe a little hooting and hollering, but it has been something they've done for a number of years. Frankly, I think the addition of an escort in the form of a couple of our fire trucks and I assume one of our police cars would be might be an improvement on that. The question is, Janet, in the process of acting on this, do we accept any liability that we would not accept if we just didn't react?
You're asking, you mean if we didn't sanction it?
Yes, that's right.
I mean, whenever you sanction something, of course, you open yourself up to somebody blaming you because you said it was okay. But if our police department and our fire department are already agreeing to be involved, then we're involved. So I don't think it makes, if the police and fire are going to participate in it, and allegedly or supposedly the police would be there for safety reasons, then we're already involved. So I don't necessarily think that the village board approving a celebration and the participation of the fire department and the police department, that's what it is. It's almost like anything else when we do a parade or we do the police assist with any of the other fundraising or running events that we do. I mean, that does open us up to liability because the police are involved. But I think it is a community event here. It's done during the day, as far as I know, and it's organized by the school itself. And I would believe it's monitored and by the school.
It seems to have the school's endorsement, and I think it probably, the school has been aware of it in prior years as well. It's not really a new event, but the newness is it actually, in my mind, is an improvement in the sense that it's got a, if you would, it's got an escort, and actually we're addressing intersections which other years might not have been addressed. So in that sense,
What you're saying, Mayor, is it's under more control with our involvement.
I think that's what I'm saying, yes.
That's a good thing.
So moved.
We already had a motion.
Do we have a motion?
Yeah, actually, Art and Peter.
All right.
Second.
Art and Jason. With that said, any other comments or thoughts on it? And again, I remind you that in association with this year, I know they're working on a graduation plan that will allow our seniors to graduate and receive their diplomas that will involve the oval. I don't think it's been formally, the plan has been formally finished, but I believe that our seniors will all have an opportunity. They may not be able to leave their car, but they'll have an opportunity to receive their diplomas and graduation ceremony. I was hoping that it might even take the frame of the Air Force Academy's graduation, which had all of the graduates out on the oval, seated 10 feet apart, which seemed pretty interesting. But anyway, they are working on that. And I remind you again that the village has agreed to hang banners recognizing each of the graduating seniors on our poles. And I believe when they're taken down, they'll probably be presented to the graduating senior.
Very nice.
It's a nice touch. Some of these are things that we could have been doing without COVID virus. We'll call a motion on that then. All in favor?
Aye.
Right.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so we're good on that. Anita, is there anything else coming up under your list of items?
No, there isn't.
In that case, then we'll move to the treasurer's items. We have Warren, and since we have Mindy on the line with us, Mindy, is there anything you'd like to bring up first?
No, it was a pretty straightforward warrant. We don't have any huge expenditures in it right now because the utility bills they just actually came in. So the next warrant will be sizable, but this one is still pretty minor.
Are we going to be getting a selected AUD? Mindy?
We can
Yeah.
supply that.
You have to speak up, Peter. I don't think you heard you.
No, I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry.
A hard copy of the AUD.
Yep, I gave Craig a hard copy. I have it scanned in, but Craig does have a hard copy.
If you want,
Peter has trouble reading on computers, all devices. So keep the paper, so.
I can always print you off one.
Okay, please.
I'll take one too.
Art, Peter, how about you,
Just
Scott?
big hands.
And Jason, we'll print 4 more.
Thank you.
Okay.
Non-electrical.
Anything else, Mindy?
Nope.
We'll move to the affidavit. Affidavit number 19 represents bills totaling $273,826.56. And in addition, represents refund checks written to utility customers totaling $895.43.
So moved.
Second.
Is that Jason and Peter? All in favor of their payment?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, good show on that. On the moving forward to old business, First of all, I should ask if any of the trustees have any items of new business that they'd like to bring up. If not, we'll move on to old business. Main Street project, there hasn't been any specific activity on that since the last meeting 2 weeks ago. I do expect, I was speaking with Ivan, our engineer on this project, and I expect we'll have the estimates, the engineer's estimates of the Main Street upgrade projects in approximately 2 weeks. So that's an important piece of the project.
Mayor, I
Yes.
think this may be important, and maybe you could speak to it. A lot of feedback that I've received has been, well, why didn't the village do the construction, the Main Street project this spring or this summer or this fall? And I know you may have spoken on to about it before we started to teleconference and whatnot, but maybe if you wanted to briefly kind of explain, because there is a logical reason why what would seem to be an ideal time that we just couldn't possibly do it at that time.
We still don't have DOT approval.
Yeah, we're awaiting, as I just said, we're awaiting some of the information that comes out later in the engineer's work, which is the estimates for the various elements of costs associated with it. He has prepared or is preparing the bid specification package and anticipates that will be issued end of June, June 25th. More important than anything else is the fact that we cannot really put this out to bid with confidence without having the work permits that the Department of Transportation has to provide to us from the state. We have met with the Department of Transportation, I think on 2 or 3 occasions now. Peter and I have been in Albany with Brad and with Ivan. Ivan continues to respond to DOT's inquiries as to pieces of information that they want that maybe had not yet been provided to them. So that is moving forward. I think we're also waiting on the water line itself, which is Kathy Spazzo's project. I think we're still waiting on a permit there. So there's some technical reasons, but probably the biggest issue is that we use the winter months to resolve various issues locally, either having to do with curbside parking and where people wanted parking and where they didn't. Most people wanted it, but we also were in negotiations with property owners where either temporary or minor easements were required for us to move the project forward. I've been told that at least on the upper end of Main Street, that the property owner is satisfied now, and apparently is in position to provide the required easements. Janet, you might know a little bit more about the lower end of the street, which involves the Crown Plaza owners and the who are the real owners of the municipal parking lot area.
The lower end of the street involves the town of North Elba and Lake Placid Vacation Corporation, both of whom many months ago signified their cooperation. And I just need from Ivan the plan so we can have a description of where the easement is needed. And those plans have changed a little bit, I understand. With regard to the upper end of the Main Street, I've been told by Ivan and that in his correspondence with that property owner that there seems to be some agreement. The small details still have to be worked out.
So that's where it is. But the bottom line is, I think, Jason, for the benefit of the community, we were moving along on a calendar that was following fairly closely, tracking our years and the requirements that they had with respect to the design of the project, the submission of it to the state to get the final approvals that are necessary to move forward. I think none of us anticipated the issues with the coronavirus that erupted, and I totally agree that if there was any way we could have opened up Main Street and started in April, I would have much preferred. And like each of you, I too have heard from people that have wondered why we didn't just go ahead and do it. But it's just not the way these projects are on boards.
It's an extremely complicated project.
Mhm. And that's what I've relayed. And I just, in this public forum, and since it's being recorded and some people may view this, it's a good way to get, instead of a person to person, a better way to kind of communicate at large that it's not that we ignored the opportunity. It's a vast project with a lot of complicated components and requirements. So we can't just say, oh, let's do it now. That's just not possible. And I think it was very informative for you to be able to speak on that. So
It is, and I would also add that in discussions with Mindy, our primary grant funding sources were, we had some concerns recently because the state has suspended the issuance of funding under grants that were either dated for 2019 or 2020. Understandably, given the state's financial commitment to the coronavirus issues. But at this point in time, the funding for the grants that we received actually back in, I think, 16, 17, or maybe 17, 18, are still secure. The funding is still available for those. So we're moving forward with the confidence that those are going to be available when we need them. Any other thought on that, Mindy, or did I describe it well enough?
No, I think you did a great job. The grants were issued in 16, 17, so we don't have any issues with those. The only grant that I think we may not see, which doesn't relate to the Main Street project, is the salt shed grant because it was issued in 2019. So other than that, we should be fine.
And understand that those grants aren't removed. They're just simply, they're deferred for the time being, as I understand it.
Correct.
And we're not ready to do the salt building at this point in any event. So that's on hold. But if there's nothing else under old business, I'll move on to new business. I'll move on to just mayor items. I just wanted this evening for the sake of the public record, wanted to remind folks that the Census 2020 is underway. And right now, especially given the coronavirus situation, it hasn't been possible for people, the census takers, to go door to door. In the meantime, folks are encouraged to go online. You can do this, I get it. It takes all of about 3 minutes to fill in the questions and do it electronically. So for anybody that has the ability to get online, please take the time to complete the Census 2020. It's very, very important to our state, to our county, to our township, to the village. It's one of the ways that resources get allocated to various parts of the country. If we fail to recognize all of the residents of our community, we are failing our own community by not completing that. So I just offer that and encourage people to consider taking a few minutes to go online and complete that if possible. We're lagging well behind our sister communities around us. Any other thoughts on that, Anita?
No.
Okay. The Main Street proposal, you actually heard that. That was Greg Borzilleri's proposal, so we covered that. Reopening the town hall began this morning, and while the building has pretty much been in lockdown except for an occasional essential person, The building is reopening, the lobby is reopened. People coming in will be required to have a mask on and to also use the hand sanitizer that's being provided in the foyer for their use. Folks that want to go on to upper floors of the building may have to stop in the foyer. Correct me if I'm wrong, Anita. And just to call upstairs so that the building isn't completely wide open yet. But that's the basis that we're operating on currently. We are required to wear masks when we're in the building and can't maintain social distancing. And I think we're also required to wear masks when we go from one office to another person's office. So we're doing our part. The budget for 2020-21 is underway. I have, Mindy has worked with the departments. We have the department's requirements. That is a matter that I think will take up quite a bit of my time this coming week. This week, I should say this week, not coming week. So we'll get that in place. I am a little bit concerned that we will be obviously some of the main items that we're going to be affected this year, I think, are going to be our parking revenues. We're looking for ways to mitigate what we think will be. Well, we don't think, we know we're going to take in less revenue.
Mayor, have we frozen any sort of discretionary spending as far as budget's concerned? Or are we kind of acting as is, since we may have a slight, I don't want to say cushion as far as fund balance, but we do have an opportunity for maybe a one-time life raft, maybe. I could be wrong as far as the numbers are concerned.
We haven't had to freeze anything yet. The village is in pretty solid financial condition as far as that goes.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, the last couple of years, our departments have been rather conservative in their spending, and we've been returning money to the fund balance, which is always a good thing if you don't need it, but it would be nicer if we could budget down a little bit finer. However, no, we haven't had to pull back the village's funds other than looking at the budget. For example, if you look at parking permits, most of our parking permit money comes in May, so it's just beginning to go up. The big months for parking revenues are usually July, August, September, June starts to ramp up a little bit. In fact, one thing I should ask, remind me, the meter enforcement, we had suspended that through May 15th. That was this past weekend. And I'm going to recommend that we continue that suspension at least through until we get to phase number 3. I don't see much opportunity for increased traffic on the street, but it seems to me that may be a little bit of help while they're beginning to try to reintroduce the local community to Main Street. So if it's your pleasure, but I would propose and would recommend that we continue. We're enforcing all other parking issues, but we would leave the meter enforcement, we would hold it in abeyance for one more month.
Okay.
I'd be more in favor of going to our next board meeting and then see what happens.
Which is 2 weeks.
I think we'll.
If the governor is doing it every 2 weeks, I think that's fair that we go every 2 weeks, but I do understand your perspective, Mayor, as far as rejuvenating Main Street being of paramount importance and doing what we can in order to make that happen, for sure.
Well, I have no problem with advancing it for 2 weeks. I think we'll probably end up going the other 2 weeks anyway, but again, that's judgment based on what I see for activity on the street. In that case, then somebody would put that in the form of a motion.
Make a motion to extend the not charging for parking on Main Street for 2 more weeks.
Second.
Brought up at our next meeting.
Second.
So that would take it to roughly to June 1st.
Mayor, just to Jason's point that he asked about, yes, the village itself hasn't scaled back any of the spending, but each one of the department heads has really looked at their revenues, and they themselves have, they're not doing any unnecessary spending at this time. They realize that our revenues are down because we don't have the people in town and we don't have the usage right now. So we haven't made that recommendation to them, but they themselves are taking it upon themselves to not spend anything that's unnecessary.
And that's something to be applauded, because that doesn't happen in every facet of a municipality or schools or what. Generally, it comes from the top down, but having the department heads be proactive, I have to thank them personally for that.
Absolutely.
Also, we had a relatively mild winter, and the amount of material and overtime that we would have, especially since this March virus issue began, our overtime has dropped off dramatically. But we've had also nature has treated us well. We did not have a lot of snow removal, especially later in the winter. So that also probably translates into the fact that we put down less sand and salt. Most of our village cleanup has already been, we've hit all of the village streets, at least first pass. And I believe most of them have had a second pass now. And actually the state and the village work together on Saranac Avenue and to the village line on Wilmington Road this past week and cleaned that up. So we're in good shape, but Brad is looking forward to, we're painting the interiors of the public restrooms. We know that if and when they're permitted to be reopened, they're going to have to be completely cleaned, sanitized, and we'll probably have to, we have ordered 2 additional foggers because we know that those are going to have to be sanitized probably frequently during the day. I'm guessing 2 or 3 times. We know that the foggers are going to be needed if and when the public transportation reopens for because the trolleys and buses will have to be sanitized as well. So those are steps that we have taken. And I will say that I think the foggers, it's going to be mid-June before we see those. They're also in short supply. So we're taking steps. We're building up as best we can from whatever resources we have. We're building up an inventory of sanitizer because we know we're going to need to use that in various locations. We're looking to put a sanitizer. We opened the tennis courts, I believe, this morning. We're looking to put a hand sanitizer on the fence so that people will have that available. Other locations are going to have dispensers added to them as we reopen them. A little bit of an update on that.
Oh, and Mayor, the 10,000 masks that we ordered were also delivered today, just to add that in.
Where
There's 2 cases of them located downstairs in the front office and 3 cases upstairs.
so they came in 5 cases.
Yes, there's 5 total cases and each case has 2,000 masks in it.
So the use of these masks, in addition to our own departments, which do use them regularly, these are disposable masks as opposed to ones that are washable. Also, supervisor spoke to me because we may have to provide for people that are coming into the town hall that do not think to bring their own mask with them because they'll have to have a mask on to come in. So that is a topic that Mindy, we probably should explore a little bit with Kathy and Jay.
Okay.
I think beyond that, I have indicated to our surrounding communities that if they were in a compelling situation where they needed sun, we certainly could make them available to them at our cost.
Mm-hmm. I know Sharon's putting them out on that front table in the vestibule next to the hand sanitizer right now. Not in large quantities because the hand sanitizer disappeared really fast, but at least so that if somebody does walk through the door and they don't have a mask, they can put one on.
Very well.
They get to keep them, right? Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't want it back.
Just knowing from a school perspective, hand sanitizer is expensive and people go through it quickly. So if we were to put dispensers publicly, we have to be very surgical with them. Otherwise, it's going to be, unless the cost can be covered some other way.
I think right now, Jason, the county has been providing the sanitizer to the town and also to the village.
Okay, is this the New York Clean or the? Okay.
Yeah, and I don't know that we've been asked to reimburse for that. The masks are a different situation, but if we, depending on where we see the need for them, we have an adequate supply now to last us for at least a while.
Okay, fantastic.
Anything else to come up in front of the board? Any commissioner reports?
Still working with Brad on the color of the cement, if we're going to use a color. We're also working with the town and this possibility of going down to Albany to be able to see the two colors that we might be zeroing in on.
I'm talking about Mirror Lake, starting in 8 days.
Yeah, that would start Tuesday after Memorial Day. The contractors will be on the job, and it's slated to run into September.
Okay. So I just as an aside, and I know Art, I'm sure this is your mission, because I had talked about being able to compromise, or at least the two boards agree on the same color, as opposed to one agreeing or choosing and the other one goes along. That seems to be our intent, correct?
That's what we need to do, yes. I think what we all want is something that looks natural. We don't want it to fade out. And hopefully we can come to an agreement.
So just apply the pressure to Jay if you have to, Art. Make sure.
They've been very good to work with.
Yeah.
Anything else? If not, ask Scott for a motion.
Oh, Liz is on the phone. I don't know. If she has any
Oh, Liz?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Questions?
I do. So you said that you're looking to put the Main Street project out to bid in June.
June 25th is the last date that I have seen between our engineers and the Department of Transportation.
Okay. So has a public meeting been scheduled for that?
That I'm trying to get that rescheduled. The committee, obviously with the coronavirus thing, they kind of suspended group meetings, but I'm working on trying to get, we now have, we should have shortly, a visual picture of what a updated parking lot would be for the Main Street lot across from the bank. I haven't seen that yet.
Which is not part of this project.
It's not part of the Main Street project per se, but it's a critical part of moving the Main Street forward and providing more parking. The tentative plan that committee has worked on will provide approximately 100 parking spaces more than are currently there today. It does involve the design and development of one parking deck, so it'll be a two-level parking lot up on the upper level. And if I'm not mistaken, the Main Street level would remain short-term parking and ADA type parking, which we're required to have. So we're close to being able to put those displays out. I think at the time, the committee felt that putting it out while there was nobody on the main street was not serving a practical purpose. But I'm going to ask that they rethink that and try to figure out if we can get a public information session back on the calendar.
So the June 25th date that you mentioned is for the Main Street project, not the bank lot project, correct?
That would be correct.
Okay. Is there a date set for the parking lot project?
Peter, I think the next phase on that, it goes to structural engineering.
Most likely, the other neighbors we have to deal with.
We're still working. We're also still working on with adjacent neighbors. There's a conversation involving an exchange of land in actually 2 cases. In one case, it will straighten the property line, and in the other case, it will perhaps gain better access to their property than they currently have.
Okay.
That's a separate issue from the drawing, what people will see from the street. That can be done, and we've asked for that. We haven't received it yet.
So well, there hasn't been any open public sessions. A couple of the subcommittees have one subcommittee has focused on the parking lot. That has been mostly telephone conversations back and forth. And as I said, the Public Information Committee recommended that they suspend activity until it's more appropriate time to put the Main Street project out for public information. So I think we're approaching that time, and we may not get back in the foreseeable future to what is referred to today as a gathering, which is a group of more than 10 people. So we're going to have to figure out a different way to make that work.
Okay. Is goal for you guys to go ahead?
Go ahead, Liz.
Is the goal to figure that out, how to gather public input before it's put out to bid, or?
Yes, I would say that my original thought was that we would have the visual drawings and pictures of the finished Main Street, also a proposed parking upgrade, which I think people are going to like when they see it. But I think the only thing we can really do effectively right now is put it out. I was hoping to display it on the Main Street in one of the open storefront windows so that people could visually see it and get some of the detail as to what goes along with it. I think that's probably the most reasonable opportunity. We probably also can get it out using technology so people can see it using some of the social media devices.
All right, great, thanks so much.
That was an unexpected change in direction, and hopefully we can get something back in front of the community.
I'll try to get that subcommittee to start looking at this again, Craig.
Yeah. I think considering everything else we're trying to do on the Main Street, it's important to keep that project in focus with people so that they don't think it's been forgotten, because clearly it shouldn't be and it can't be. Other questions, Liz?
No, I think you covered it. Thanks.
Anyone else have anything before we close the meeting? If not, Scott?
Motion to adjourn the meeting.
Move a second.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Meeting is adjourned.